Good evening, everyone. Hey, look at the time. We are late. So I just wanted to get started on the January meeting of the Fort Worth Astronomical League. My name is Bruce Campbell. I'm the president of the club this year. And I did want to let everybody know that I'm kind of depressed. It's not dry January for me, but the days are getting longer, the nights are getting shorter, and that's a bummer for me. However, I'm glad you're all here, and we got a pretty good show tonight, I believe. So just wanted to get started. I did want to find out if we had any visitors to our club today. Oh, would you like to stand up and tell us who you are and what you hope to get out of the club?
Name's Don Lampy. Really, I'm kind of new to this. Having retired, I've had time to do all this stuff. I have this long list, and that was one of the things I'm going to do. I've got a 5-year-old granddaughter, and I've decided, hey, we're going to get into this together. And so I think when my son's an Eagle Scout, and I was assistant scoutmaster. I think the Fort Worth Astronomical Club came out to Worth Ranch maybe over a weekend, and we did a astronomy America X thing. So that's my biggest association with astronomy. So.
Okay, very good. Hey. Well, I think you found the right place because it's an interesting cocktail because we will help you identify what's up in the sky so you can when you head outside, you know what to look at. We can make available to you our club equipment if you don't have any at the time. And we also have a dark sky site if you want to get into some darker skies and away from the DFW light dome. So there are some good advantages to joining the club. Principally, everybody else in this room has years of experience, and we can help you, or at least answer your questions about what's a good starter scope. We'll quiz you on where do you want to go with your astronomy endeavors, and give you the information that they didn't have when they joined or they started their endeavor. So I think you'll enjoy it. Let's go to the next slide. That was a visitor spiel. Let's go to the next one. So we do have some members who joined in the last couple months that were documented here. Are any of them here tonight? Oh, great. You mind standing up and telling us your name and anything else about astronomy? Okay.
And so I do have still looking for somebody to help me with the Northridge Elementary School for that explosion. It's during the day, and so like I have a solar filter for my telescope, so I can bring that. But I would like to have somebody else to help me, like be able to teach the kids and stuff. It'll be stationed, so it'll be at most like 20, 30 kids at a time, and it is free lunch. They're providing us with lunch.
Okay. And so Tyler, you're the guy that published the Mars moon occultation picture that you just happened to be out on your driveway with your telescope and equipment and took a fantastic shot. That's pretty cool. So congratulations. All right. Anyone else? Anybody online? Joining the club? Nope. Okay, let's go about FWAS. We've been in business for like 74 years now, since 1949. And it's, as you can see, it's a large astronomical group. We've got a bunch of members, which were individual people that participate in club activities and outreach activities. And like I said earlier, we've got a wide range of experience. Also, what I mentioned is we're always willing to help. Members of the club have access to our email forum. So if you ever have a question, you can pose a question and you'll get fairly quick response to whatever you're interested in. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, in terms of our resources, our dark sky site is also named Rising Star Observing Area. That's the one that's located in West Texas, far away from the DFW Light Dome. It's worth the trip. We also have access to the Thompson Observatory down in Keene, Texas. We do have a variety of club scopes that continue to grow. We're going to go pick up 2 6-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain scopes sometime in the next couple weeks, so our scopes inventory grows. And also we have a membership handbook that helps you understand the rules and regulations, as well as where to go to get information. And then our online resources, which is the next slide. And so we'll jump to the next slide and see what's up there. Right. So we do have a social media presence, name it. We have a website, we have Facebook, we have YouTube. YouTube's pretty cool, I like that. There's some very good videos on there. And then for those people that are members, you can participate in the group forums, and that's the FWAS main is the first one, and then we have a astrophotography special interest group for those people that have gone down that rabbit hole. Am I right? Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're ready.
Thank you. Good luck. All right, so who we have here tonight is he's actually a member of our club. He is a retired NASA engineer, right? And he was actually in project management involving the International Space Station and the Constellation projects. But namely, why he is here tonight is that he's also a writer. And he was a co-author of this book, this brilliant book about the ARP catalog, Halton ARP and his story, and also what is the ever-growing Annals of the Deep Sky series. Oh, okay, here. Not me, the book. The Annals of the Deep Sky series. I'm being cued by the camera. Anyway, I'll let him explain the rest of it, but with all the background that he's got, hate to put you on the spot, but maybe you might be able to come back and tell us about those other things that you did with NASA someday. But for now, I'm looking forward to hearing about the books.
Thank you. And could you leave your books up so I could use them as a visual aid? Thank you. All right, next slide. The Annals of the Deep Sky, the full title, A Survey of Galactic and Extragalactic Objects. It's a book series for amateur astronomers like us by Jeff Knipe and me. Jeff is a real science journalist. I am a hobby astronomer who can obsess over data, and so we became a good partnership. And we had just finished our book, The ARP Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies, had some critical success, and we said, we've got something special here, what should we do? And we talked about a lot of things. Jeff has several other books that that made a splash but weren't durable. And so we said, well, what would be the biggest thing that we could do because of our great brains that can do this? And we said, well, there have been 5 attempts to update Burnham's Celestial Handbook, which for those of you who don't know, it was in the 1980s. It was a brilliant compendium of observing information. At the time, people were getting 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrains, which were really big telescopes for the time. And he went deep enough to find beautiful objects and talk about them and talk about the physics as it was known in the 70s. And marvelous thing. And he died broke because he sold his publishing rights for nothing. And we said, well, we don't want to do that. And so we said, well, what could we do? Well, we kind of looked at maybe a 5-volume set would cover the whole sky, because that's what Burnham's did. It covered the whole sky alphabetically by constellation, which is really kind of an 18th century kind of way of dealing with it, but it's the way us amateur astronomers think about it. We think in constellations. So we said, okay, let's see what we can do. And we kind of, after I retired, we burrowed for 3 years and figured out a design that pleased us. We had friends look at it and say, no, don't do that. That's already in 20 other books. Do this. And we're grateful to have Richard Berry, who was a friend to both of us. So, where it is today? Well, there were 8 volumes published by Wilman Bell leading up to 2020. Wilman Bell had to shut down, and we thought, well, that's the end of the series. But American Astronomical Society Sky Publishing bought the entire Wilman Bell catalog. 22 tons of inventory. Wilman Bell was a very old school publisher. And since, volumes 9 through 11 have been published by Sky Publishing. It's organized alphabetically by constellation. We are now through, or the series is now through Hydra. So I think we're maybe close to halfway through alphabetically the constellations. We tell in-depth stories about objects we observe as amateurs, including some very advanced objects, because there are people that got big aperture and can do astrophotography, and you can see things that pro astronomers didn't see 50 years ago. Modern astrophysics, and we decided it had to be richly illustrated, and that's what I ended up doing. I did most of the illustrations in the first 6 volumes. You can read it like a novel or use it as an observing reference. We find most people keep it in their library at home and use it to build an observing plan for an expedition. Stars, clusters, nebula, galaxies, and something I kind of fought to do is talk about the large-scale structure of the universe, because it's unimaginably big. None of us can conceive of what 1,000,000 miles is, much less 100 million light years. And so we tried to find a way to talk about that. Next slide. So I'll show you what we have in the books for Boötes. We do some of the history of the mythology, and so this is the picture of Boötes the herdsman from Byers Uranometria in 1603. I love this engraving. He looks like Waylon Jennings. And Waylon Jennings was a cowboy, and that's what a herdsman is. For each constellation, we have okay, what does it look like on a June evening when it's directly overhead? And then, you've seen these kind of diagrams, like the annual Sky and Telescope diagram, and I thought, well, why don't we show graphically when the constellation is highest above the horizon and when it rises and sets? And then, since I was overachieving, I said, why don't we say where from the planet you can see it directly overhead and where can't you see it? Next slide. For each constellation, we pick a bunch of objects to tell the story. We don't talk about everything that's there. We try to talk about what's interesting. And so I learned to build a star chart with, a reasonable number of stars, the constellation outline, and where the objects that we're talking about are, and a little list. Next chart. For every object, we decided I hate digging for right ascension and declinations in the middle of a paragraph. And so we put all of the kind of quantitative, standard, nomenclature in a little box. And I'm pleased to say that after I left the project, they keep doing this, so you're welcome. We go through a history of discovery and observation, and this was kind of Jeff's thing, and I was just dazzled by the stories of how a thing was first discovered, how they said, this is unusual, this is important. And then, in some cases, a century and a half of actual science figuring out what the hell's going on. We also tried to hit recent research and insights into what is going on, which was, I had to learn how to read, find papers, and research papers and understand them, and anybody can have access to this stuff. Most of the astronomical literature is free, available to anybody with the internet. You just have to know how to ask what you want. And we put together enough photos and diagrams so we think you can tell the story. And of course, since about the really the whole history of astronomical literature, before there were computer graphics and stuff, there were brilliant designers and draftspeople who made the most amazing hand-drawn illustrations in the oldest of the thing. And you think, well, that's all old stuff. No. There's incredibly good science in 100-year-old illustrations and papers. Next slide. So here's kind of a sample of what we have for stars. Lovely double star, Delta Boötes. That's a digitized sky survey, which is the 1950s Palomar Observatory Sky Survey plates that all of us can access online. Some little things, okay, there's Delta 1, the primary, Delta 2, the secondary, and a little thing, okay, it's 105 arc seconds across, so it's a, this is a wide double that you can see. And we draw arrows that say that's the proper motion. Not only are these two stars orbiting each other, they're also moving together through space. For all the stars that we talk about in the constellation, I built an HR diagram, which I can't say I...
Laser pointer?
Oh, I have one. I just like to jump around and point. Which, at the start of this, I sort of knew what an HR diagram was, but it turns out there's a huge amount of information in, like, on that gray box on the previous thing it says the spectral type of the star. Well, here's kind of what that means. And I tried to do a rough approximation of how big the star is compared to other stars. And so the big stars are these big blobs. Hooray for Adobe Illustrator for knowing how to make that. I forget, I don't think delta is a part of this, but in the text, we talked about how all stars pulse to some extent. And there's non-radial pulsations where part of it moves in, part of it moves out. And then there's radial where it just it all goes. And in fact, there's a whole science of stellar astrophysics that talks about not only is there those two modes, there are dozens of vibrational modes that stars do. You know, you can't hear it, and you can't see it looking at it, but if you precisely measure a lot of things about the surface of a star, even a faraway star, you can discover that stuff. And we're lucky we have a star really close that we have huge amounts of data about, the sun, and it let us say, oh, I can figure that out for the sun, let me figure it out for a star. All of the oldest amateur observing guides had a list of double stars, so we looked at all of those, did some quality work on it to make sure that we had, hey, we think these are the best, easiest double stars. You double star people at work, those half an arc second stars, you're nuts. You're nuts. Next slide. Something I had never gotten into, I had friends who were AAVSO observers, but it never interested me. Variable stars, I had never had a personal interest in it. And then I discovered, oh, the American Society of Variable Star Observers has a database that goes back to the 1890s of amateurs measuring relative magnitudes of stars, particularly the very active variable stars. And so we were able to construct from that database this plot. This is 10 years of V Boötes, and well, it's sort of periodic, but it's, you know, it's not regular. And gee, look at this. It goes way down, and here it just kind of jiggles around the middle. And we talk about what scientists think is going on to make that variation in brightness of a variable star. And with pretty much any telescope and some discipline, you can make observations that say, okay, on this night at this time, this star was this magnitude by comparing to stars around it. Next slide. There's a globular cluster. It's a strange globular cluster. It makes a nice picture, NGC 5466. Well, it turns out it is well outside of the disk of the galaxy. That's where it is today. That's where it's going to be in 100 million years. And 100 million years ago, it was actually below our galaxy. And we know a lot about this because, okay, that's the picture actually made by my dear friend in Houston, Al Kelly. We know a lot about it, but it turns out when you blast, let's say you're a globular cluster, and you're zooming through the universe and you hit the Milky Way galaxy, and then you come out, well, it turns out the gravity of the Milky Way galaxy is pulling stars off the globular cluster. And for a scientific process I don't remember, scientists were able to estimate the stars that were originally a part of that globular cluster that have been sucked out in a stream along the path that the globular cluster is moving. Who knew stuff was going so crazy like that? Next slide. Dwarf galaxies are fun. And in fact, this particular one, Boötes 3, there's Boötes 1 and 2, but this is Boötes 3. It is actually orbiting the Milky Way galaxy. That's the Milky Way, there's where our sun is. And Boötes 3 is heading back down now towards the plane of the galaxy. And this is an example of the kind of amazing illustration that comes in astrophysical journals. Here's the thing on the left shows some of the, I forget what the point was. Oh yeah, There's an NGC 5466, which was a globular cluster. That's it up at the upper left. Boötes 3 is this kind of swirling mass of isophotes that says, yeah, there's a whole bunch of stars there that are all related. Next slide. My favorite part, the last thing I really did a lot of observing, is galaxies. And so here's a picture of a, from the digitized sky survey of a field with a bunch of galaxies in it. It turns out 2 of those are in the arc peculiar galaxies, and we got rights from Caltech to reprint images from Halton Arp's 1966 Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies, and I'm privileged to own an actual print photographic copy of the Atlas. Next slide. Okay, one of the things I wanted to do, and my colleagues were kind of, I don't know, you know, it's probably too hard, nobody will miss it, but I worked for probably months trying to figure out how to depict the third dimension. You know, for us, the third dimension, when you're observing, is, well, it's up there. You know, yeah, they used to say the vault of the heavens, because it was just, well, there was this big ceiling over everything. And we actually now know that it's incredibly big. So, here inside the Milky Way, there's our sun. There's a thing called the local fluff with a few stars that we talk about. There is the outside of the local bubble, which is an area inside the Milky Way that is not particularly dense. And then some more stars and where they are. And so what you've got is you've got how far away, 100 light years, 200 light years, 300 light years, and then that's the declination across the tall, narrow Boötes constellation. Now, as you get further out of the Milky Way, at the upper thing, there you see a little schematic of the Milky Way where the sun is, and there's that same wedge, but in this case, instead of 100 light years, it's 100,000 light years, 200,000 light years, 300,000 light years. And in this case, it's the nearby galaxies, the 3 Boötes dwarf galaxies. Next slide. Now we're going way outside. Okay, that last one we left the Milky Way galaxy. Now we're going across the large-scale structure of the universe. And so that last thing was 100,000 light years. Now this is 100 million light years, 200, 300 million light years. There's a Boötes cloud of galaxies that we talk about. 2 or 3 galaxies that we talked about. And there's a thing called the local void that relatively close, 50 million light years away, there's this space in the universe where there are not very many galaxies. And in the large-scale structure of the universe, we call those things voids. They're not empty. They're full of gas and other stuff. There's just an underdensity of galaxies. But it's thought to tell us something important about the origin and structure of the universe. And so really, starting in the 1970s, they started building a catalog of voids, and I have a nice book that has all of those. And then, okay, going further out, 1,000 million light years, there's a Boötes supercluster of galaxies, probably thousands of galaxies, and the Boötes A supercluster, which is even bigger. Someone says, are superclusters the largest structure in the universe? Are there super-duper clusters? And the answer is superclusters are kind of a useful model for the 90s. Now you've got that thing called Laniakea that looks like it's the backbone of the whole universe, or at least our part of it. Next slide. Volume 1, we felt we had to spend some time laying a groundwork, not necessarily, you didn't have to read it to understand the rest, but we thought, well, let's make a good run at explaining astrophysics, which is a little different than astronomy. I didn't understand this, but I learned. So one of the things I struggle with is this notion of distance. one Earth, there's a surface of the Earth, and then we logarithmically go up to where we get to the edge of the universe where we have evidence of the Big Bang. So that was fun. I really enjoyed cramming that in with, these are things that we know about and some we can observe and some that we can't as amateurs. We also explained star cluster nomenclature. There's this Trumpler classes of open clusters. I don't know if it's still in use, but it was in use for a couple hundred years. And people used it for, to say, okay, these are all type 1 strongly concentrated. And then group 4 is, they're barely a globular cluster, but or an open cluster, but we call them that. And so this is just an illustration of how those classes work using eyepiece impressions by my friend George Robert Keppel, who did a lot of his work from Arizona. He's semi-retired now. Next slide. If we're going to go to all the trouble to build a technical introduction, at the end of volume 2, we added an appendix, essential terminology, and I learned some things when we did that. Next slide. So, things I learned from this, the research literature is there for all of us. Literally, every published astronomy paper going back to the 1880s, few exceptions, you can go look up and read for yourself. And that says, okay, we've reached this wonderful thing that the internet was supposed to do. Information about everything for everybody. Also, I found that virtually every observatory, whether orbital or on the ground, publishes their images. And subject to licensing, you can put them in your book. Anything that's a NASA image is free. You can put it in the book, you can make an opera about it, you can do anything you want because it's public domain. The other thing is I had to go get permission from authors of those papers to use their illustrations in our book. I had to write them an email, hundreds. That was a tedious part. And almost all of them are just super nice that you're interested in their work, that they always will say, yeah, go ahead and use that image or that illustration from my paper. And sometimes you get an invitation. I was using a very early radio astronomy map before the days of plotters. It was just ASCII characters printed on a thing, and it was revolutionary at the time. And he said, hey, I'm retired, but if you're ever in Albuquerque, I'll take you out to the VLA. And we never followed up, but I did get to the VLA. I got to ask some very famous astronomers over email, and they were all polite. Next slide. We had some good reviews. I won't, this Cloudy Nights went nuts, including people who despised the idea and said, that'll never work, you'll never finish. Ha, 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 ha. You know, guy who I watch a lot on Cloudy Nights, the writing is lively and energetic and the diagrams work beautifully with the text. I can die happy for that. But it's, and it's fun to read. We think we've created a remarkable thing. Next slide. Okay, when we started in 2009, we weren't sure how many books. We thought 5 would be ambitious. Who would buy 5 books? You know, but Perry Romaclis at Wilman Bell had a vision. He said, well, books are expensive, but paper is cheap. And I think now the volumes are growing to about almost 400 pages each, where we thought we were doing good to get 280. I dropped out in 2018 after volume 6. I'm 71 now. I was a little younger back then, but I was slowing down. And the pace we had, I generally had to spend 4 days a week, 6 hours at the workstation, feverishly producing stuff, and I just don't have the stamina. And so we parted ways, because they thought they could do the illustrations without me. It turned out a lot harder than they thought, but you know, they overcame. Annals production at that point stopped in 2020. Wilman Bell had to close down. For those of you who don't know, Wilman Bell was literally a mom and pop company. They had a few people that they had hired, but Perry personally created every page and every manuscript on the computer. Pat ran the business. Lovely, lovely people. Perry is interested in everything, but both of their health was declining. Perry kept putting off getting his knees fixed. If you've been told you need knee surgery, get it. Your life changes. I've had so many friends that have done that. And so they shut down, and we said, what the hell? What are we going to do? And poor Jeff, he's got, 10 more volumes that he wants to write. And so Perry had an escape plan, and that was to get the American Astronomical Society to buy the imprint. And you may remember, if you don't know much about American Astronomical Society, you know about 4 years ago, Sky and Telescope went bust, and they bought the magazine and kept it going. So they struggled, AAS Shop at Sky struggled for the first year because Perry had 4 rented storage rooms with 22 tons of books, some of it books that hadn't sold in 10 years. And so the fact that they've been able to get the hot part of the Wilman Bell catalog alive is pretty remarkable. It's pretty remarkable. So will Annals ever be finished? I don't know. We all talked once we were, into about volume 5 and said, we're all going to die before this thing gets done. and Perry just kind of got that look on his face. He says, we've created something wonderful. Someone will step up and do it. And so right now Jeff's blasting along, and he's in heaven, getting to work the way he likes to work and finding new stories. So I'm tickled to death to have been a part of it. And you go, Jeff. Next slide. Okay. Any questions for me? Yes, sir.
You were there through volume 6. How many volumes are there total?
It's volume 11 came out in time for the Christmas gift giving season. Any other questions? Okay, I have been told, is there a question up there? Yes, in the back.
Thank you.
Oh, good. The microphone.
What colleges would you recommend for future NASA engineers?
Colleges for future NASA engineers. I would say any accredited engineering school or math physics. I worked with a lot of people that had math physics degrees, and we still hired them in because you're looking for, a social demeanor and the ability to master complicated technical things. And so yes, I'm a graduate of University of Houston, a modest but accredited engineering college. I have had dear friends who were graduates of MIT, and kind of a next level of brilliance, a brilliant optician that worked at the Space Center, and telescope maker and a friend, and a really good banjo player. So the thing is, don't do the online thing because you get this rich socialization. This old guy talking, so maybe the other people have different ideas. But do that 4 years of intense socialization around the material makes you more able to walk into a job, in any engineering job, but at NASA, and say, okay, what are we going to do? How can I help? And that's, did that answer your question? Okay, yes, sir, you.
Take the word count, cannot, or can't, out of your vocabulary.
Amen. Everything is possible.
Engineer, by the way.
Well, the whole thing I've learned, and I've learned to use that in my later life. I'm a volunteer development director at a tiny, struggling nonprofit in Fort Worth. And I've been able to do amazing things that I didn't think possible, but just by saying, meh, how hard can it be? And you know, you just dig in and, oh, this is awful. But you can make it work. Any other questions?
Question from YouTube, two questions. How many more volumes are needed to cover all the constellations?
The question of how many more volumes to cover all the constellations. Well, being an engineer, by the time we had built 3 of these, I said, okay, we have a data set of 3. I should be able to extrapolate how many volumes. And one way I did it, it was 30. One way it was 22. But what happened was that assumed that this is a commodity. Okay, a constellation takes up this amount of space. On average, it'll have this many objects. Okay, you can, and you know, well, that was good, but it turned out not useful to predict the coming volumes because we'd find a story and Jeff would do a 20-page sidebar on this particular astronomer. And all of the things they did, particularly the crucial role they had in the story about the object we were telling. And a few other things. I think we did a big thing on Caroline Herschel at the end of one of the volumes. So it's, I think the 22 volumes is a reasonable estimate that says they're half through now. But I quickly learned, well, my partners didn't care to hear the results of my stellar analysis of future production, and so I just stopped pushing it.
The second question is, did you consider making a set of volumes for the northern hemisphere and then a separate one for the southern?
The question is, was there consideration of doing volumes for the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere? Yes, we thought about that, because particularly if you're selling astronomy books, the market for the northern hemisphere is massively bigger than the southern hemisphere. And we kind of went back and forth on that, and we said, no, let's just stick to our alphabetical by constellation. And the test of that was, I forget which volume it is, but it was one of the later ones. We decided, well, you could do, the Magellanic Clouds are kind of their own thing, and there is so much information in there, and there's so much to observe. And we could have okay, well, we'll just do it as a part of these 2 constellations. But the story about the Magellanic Clouds is the history of observation and how much was learned uniquely from the Magellanic Clouds. And so we had decided before I left that, no, we're going to do a volume on the Magellanic Clouds in Dorado, and I forget the other constellation it's in. And it's a striking book that doesn't look like anything like the others, because it's, yes, we talk about a lot of objects, but the introduction to what is a Magellanic Cloud and how we think they got created and why they look the way they do, that was a huge story all its own. So, no, we decided not to. We knew that, well, we hope we can sell a Magellanic Cloud volume just on the few rich people who do travel to Australia to observe, or South America, and the general curiosity. We think we built a fine book for reading, and then there are these obsessive people who say, no, I have to have every volume in the set. We love those people. I hope some of them are here. Anything else, Chris? Any other questions? Okay, I think I have...
One more.
Oh, there's one more.
Actually, 2.
Oh, even better.
This may be a question you don't want to hear, but is any of this available online?
Well, the books themselves are available online at Shop at Sky. Perry Ramaklis, the founder of Wilman Bell, as an old guy, he made a great transition into the world of e-commerce. In some cases, he had one of the first small publisher working point-of-sale things online. And it was the fact that it was so unusual and unique was part of the reason why they had to shut down, because they couldn't get people to maintain it. He was dead set against selling ebooks. And he actually, one of the few people he had hired was someone to do DMCA takedowns. Let me explain. A book that's relatively popular, someone will poke it into a giant scanning machine and generate a PDF from the physical book, and we'll put it up online, and you can read it and download it. And they do this not because they want you to have the knowledge or have the right, but because when you offer a lot of books, you can sell ads on the pages. And it's illegal because it's making a copy for profit that does not benefit the author or the publisher. And so I would, you know, I just Google our books, and yep, you would see these link farms pop up and say, hey, Annals of the Deep Sky Volume 3, here it is, download it. And so Perry had, I think his daughter-in-law paid her, I think once a month, to just go Google the internet and then send the letters that forced them to take it down. So I would like there to be a digital version of this so that people could take it with them on the field in a way that's a little more useful than, you know, the trade paperback. It's not the most convenient thing on the observing table. But the publisher was dead set against it, and so, well, he published my books. I'm 100% in on that. There was another question up there.
Yeah, it was actually me. Just going back to the collection of the books, that it was kind of a genius move to put a slice of the whole night sky on the spine of the book. And
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it was like if you missed the
Go
book.
back to the first page. Could you go back to the first page of the PowerPoint?
Yeah. If you miss one of the books, you don't have the whole picture.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The photograph is a wonderful panorama from the European Southern Observatory. I forget which one, but you've got the Milky Way, and there are hints of some of the observatory buildings here. And it was funny, Perry called me, hey, we need to design a cover. And he's a collector of naval history, fictional and actual history. And a lot of the sets of the prominent authors, once they do a retrospective and reissue all the books, the dust jackets, they do something like this. And so since I was a graphics guy on the team, I said, well, you know, let me go look. And so I found the picture, figured out a reliable way once I know the page count to cut that slice out. And it's sort of worked. They're particularly the Sky versions, little, I don't know, I'm unhappy with the alignment. And then you go to different printers and this crap happens. So, okay, we tried really hard. But it's a beautiful thing. In fact, you look at collectible books in famous author series, you'll see stuff like this a lot. And we think it looks nice on the shelf. I remember we had someone complain, why didn't you change the color at the bottom of the spine? It was a new production group that just, it was one thing too many. Any other questions? Okay, I think that's it for me. Now, I've been told by the powers that be that I have a few copies of the Annals book and one copy of the art book. If people would like to buy them, I will take checks. I will even take a promise to send me a check because I used to lug these things around to star parties and sell them, and I don't do that anymore. So, going out of business sale.
Question, and it's for the volumes that Chris Ashford is asking. He said he found volumes 1 through 11 for sale. 1 through 7 are like $27, and how come volume 11 is $44?
Perry worked really hard to make these affordable books. Now, $25, that's a lot of money, but for small publishers, 400 pages with the kind of content, it's 25 is a good price. And in fact, for years, we didn't put any color on the inside because if you go back 10 years ago, that was expensive. And it was also a problem that you had to do work to make sure the color looks good. Well, the last one that Perry worked on, I think that was seven or eight, he found a printer that would do it, and so we added color. And he chose to raise the price because it was a little more expensive. Now the books are published by Shop at Sky AAS, and they have a slightly different business model. The publisher sets the price. And so, you know, we loved it that we were relatively affordable as books go, but Shop at Sky is only going to produce them if they can sell them for that price, because American Astronomical Society is a nonprofit. It seems counterintuitive that a tiny for-profit company can sell it for cheaper than a massive nonprofit, but probably nobody does it like Perry and Pat Vermaklis did in terms of a tiny, lean team. And so it's what the publisher is going to charge, and we don't get to have a vote. Any other questions?
Still worth it.
Add up the numbers. I don't do that. I've got my set. I don't care what it costs. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, and if I sell books, tell me where you want. I think there's something about can't do commerce in here, but I can go out in the hall, and it's disruptive. So just tell me what to do.
Thank you. No, yeah, appreciate it.
Swap meets.
Oh. Well, very good. It's time for us to take a break. Why don't we meet back here at 8:05 and we'll do the raffle and go from there. So we're shooting for 8:05. Where can you sell?
Technically, we're not supposed to be in conference here, but if we keep quiet. Remember last time I bought one out of your car last time? Oh. It's only because you had them out there.
Well, no, one time we did it,
So, I mean, we do our swap meets. Chris, how many we got online? Can I help?
Isn't that great?
Yeah, I've been looking forward to that one for a while. I've been meaning to ask him for like the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
Scheduling the meeting, I mean, presentation.
The graphic?
Like maybe 12 days away from tonight.
Yeah.
And I contacted all those people. And they were all like, oh, I can't do January, how about February, or how about April? Well, I'm like, God, yeah, it's going to be. Oh, yeah. And it's like, but it's 10 days ago. And things look for, and it was like, and then me a big call for presentations, and he was like, do something, and I was like, bro, are you available on January? Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I can do that. I'm just like, we just go down. Like,
It is amazing.
yeah.
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 That's amazing.
Well, I was doing programs. Somehow I fell into rhythm, and I booked 6 months after I was done with my vice presidency for the next time.
Yeah.
I don't know how he did that. I couldn't do that now. Definitely not this. I think I'd have to go to Latifu's convention, either by car.
Well, that was a part of it. That was a part of it. But what I'm finding is that going online and just thinking about what the club is interested in. And like I was like, okay, you know, everybody's kind of into the whole solar astronomy thing like this. What about somebody that's involved with the SDO telescope? And so I went online and I went to the SDO website and I looked at the team and I either their title or the friendliest face or a combination of the two. And maybe even an additional search type, maybe somebody in that group that's maybe already done presentations. Sure. Or just shoot it straight to the top and just yeah. Tell me it's not you, who, and he's right. I mean, people are astronomers are remarkable, you know, helpful, and we've got somebody from the imaging team from the World Flipper next month. And she was like, in her last email to me, she was like, I'm so glad there's an interest in this. And I'm like, you have no idea. Oh my gosh, yeah, you have no idea. Like they're very humble. Yeah. It's neat. And you know, most astronomers Are these you? Yeah. I don't do autographs, but I'm a little fanboy. Yeah. They really are just amazing. Amazing books. This one is so much more than you think it is. This is just about Altamont and his catalog. You know, a whole section about the objects and stuff. But he had some pretty controversial ideas about. First of all, he got a lot of guff for like even being interested in anything that wasn't just a part of the standard, Hubble model. And like he was looking at the weird stuff, and then started noticing that with a lot of these, galaxies. First of all, it was like, why are these not pretty spirals? Why are these not so tidy? Where is this in the evolution of the galaxies? Because it's not in the Hubble diagram. I see. And then he started noticing, and it turns out that it was just by coincidence that there seemed to be a lot of quasars in the area. Oh, wow. But they were billions of light years past, so completely coincidence. But, he put it out there, and between being interested in something that wasn't the mainstream attention to professional astronomers at the time, and then, kind of throwing out some controversial theories here and there. A lot of this book is kind of about like all the politics. Oh really? It's something else. Like kind of ugly. Yeah. And I mean it's like, damn, there's politics in it. Yeah, good reading. Well, that was the big surprise, was just like the politics of the whole. I mean, like, wow, we're talking about scientists here. There should be room for that. Yeah. You're surprised. Interesting. Yeah.
Because when he first started talking, I thought I'm going to book this. And so the more he talked, the more I was thinking, yeah, nice to have.
It's a good one.
Good for him.
Yeah. What did you say, 18 online?
Yeah.
Do we keep track of how much attendance we have every meeting?
I don't know if we incorporate online. I do for the site.
We ought to start doing that. calling the kid, I don't know who Tyler is, the guy that did the Mars occultation.
It's actually a really good picture, too.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was like, who's Tyler talking about?
yeah. I knew he was a new member, but I had not had any interaction with him, and I thought I'd like to see his set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, of everybody that took a picture of the occultation, he actually had the best picture out of everybody in the club. It's like,
And to hear him talk, his email said, and then some people walked by, so I took off my imaging gear and put in an eyepiece so they could see it, and then reassembled it. And I thought,
wow, yeah. That's awfully generous.
that's confidence.
Yeah, yeah.
Because how many of us have a wire? Just one.
Well, yeah, and even if you don't, it's a lot to sort of put all that back together. It's a pretty kind thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, it's not exactly.
I would have said, come back tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'll have my, we'll have two separate rigs or something.
So,
Yeah. I guess so. I guess how circus is on the road. Oh gosh, the circus is on the road.
and I don't know why. It sounded like it was a, but they could get back or whatever. So,
This thing got stuck.
yeah, but I don't know what that is. And then, airlines are, so, I had to fly to DFW, I guess, and then pick him up, drove him, drove him in.
This. Getting right in raw. This came with the spectrograph. That's two of them.
Yeah, two of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Starlight goes through a slit in it.
Yeah.
Fracks and.
Yeah, like the man. But I mean, is it a barrel spectrograph? It's like a.
No, it's like
reflecting.
it's like a flat wedge looking thing, and the light comes in here and it goes out here.
Okay. That's right, it's slit or barrel. I think barrel because it's round. Slice of it, so it emulates a slit. It uses the curvature of the surface to get that slice.
I would say it's a slit.
I think it's a slit. I was reading, I looked it up online. I was reading, they had the manuals online. So I was reading about it.
The plan is, yeah, we did a lot of amazing sensors essentially a channel.
If there is interest in that, I'm curious how much that. That's just software. Ooh, no, I don't think that.
Well, you get an image out of this.
you put this on your telescope and then, you get the image, so you capture the image. First flight was my go-to mount. I got an AM5N. I went out to Rising Star, got the witch in 6.5 hours. Sleeping in my car. No, I spent, she said, spend the night there. Slept in my cold car. With my 135mm lens, like I want to, now that I'm going to, I can go to Star Park. I can sign out for, I want to try something.
Yeah, I'm gonna play it. Yeah, it's an 80 millimeter astrotape. See if that's nice. Good. It's just a donation. It's another donation. Maru had it.
Yeah, Maru is telling me he's got an astrotape.
Really, I would take it.
That's perfect. Appreciate your email. When we're at Rising Star, I can't tell you, this guy showed up in a pickup truck. He's my age, he's 74, you know, and he's like, you guys need any telescopes? He had a whole truck in the back of his pickup truck, Newtonians, he had a couple of refractors. He had his amateur astronomer there, and he's down to one telescope. I don't have time, you know. I got what I need right now. I'm just gonna, he says, I was gonna sell it, but I'll give it away if it's gonna be used.
Right, yeah.
Well, we have outreach, we donate telescopes to libraries and schools, and, you know.
Yeah, it's going to a good home.
It'll be used, yeah, it's just not gonna sit in somebody's barn. Yeah, it's just, you know, of course, sir, we can help you out here. Take a look. Oh, you know, all kinds of stuff.
Where was this? Just
In Cross Plains. We did the library in Cross Plains had a,
somebody just
we
showed
did a
up.
star party. And he was doing a presentation, and we were out setting up in a parking lot to look at the sun. I had my cone on, telescope, and other guys had cargoes there. He had, you know, some of his solar scopes, and Maroon was there. We had
There's that
several.
little solar thing. Yeah, there's a,
It's about a month ago.
yeah, I think there's actually even a picture of that in a slideshow.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Pictures here.
Yeah, we're out there, it's like a month, or about 2 months, it was November. And this guy's, I'll bet we had about 10 pickup trucks, just kind of, you know, it's in a small town, 960 people.
Yeah.
And these people were just like, hey, what's going on? You guys looking at? Oh, look at the sun. Out of the truck, they come over and look and chat them up a little bit. Yeah, I've got, you know,
It draws a,
we got telescope, right? Telescope, it's out in the barn, I ain't used it in years. Well, you know, we have a dark sky site nearby. Of course, you live down there, you live in the dark sky. But I said, you know, we got a club, we have meetings, you know, we can Zoom, you know, and attend. We have functions out there so often. You know, if you're a member, you could use that. We have internet, we have power out there, room, you know, manicure, mow,
safe.
it's safe. A couple friendly dogs come out, you know, they greet you all the time. And,
Right.
But I can't tell you how many people just can't get you guys. Said, you know, what do you guys do? You know, I could hear. I think he heard about that we're going to be here. The library publicized this. You know, the library down there is pretty active. Okay, just you know, you guys need it. Thank you again. Stepping up.
I don't know my,
Pick up. So we'll pick up and all this stuff.
yeah, like the store that you just bought.
All right. Collecting this stuff for years.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So I have a correction to make. We're not going to start at 8:05. We're going to start at 8:15.
Yeah.
Fell off the back of some delivery trucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. Very productive. Yep. All right, so by popular demand, something about it's getting colder outside, I'm going to start now. So we're going to do the raffle. So those of you who purchase raffle tickets, pull them out because I'm about to announce the first winner. And there are several books up here that you can choose from. I don't know if this one's in the mix. Is this part of the giveaways?
That's part of the giveaway.
Okay. Did you hear that? It's part of the giveaways. All right. So the first number is 480 6809. This is embarrassing. 480 6809. Oh.
Keep going in the end. Keep going. Well, no, he bought two already.
Take your time. Planets, Halley's Comet, Planet Quest, Ken Croswell. I'd say you picked a good one. All right. And see, that happens when you come in person. Very good. Second ticket is 480-6859. Come on up. Thank you. While he's looking through that, I just noticed we have a copy of the Astronomy Cafe. It's a good book. They answer questions, common astronomy questions that have been posed. It's good for teenagers. Or people who need to catch up on astronomy. Oh, thank you. So the last book he was looking at are postcards of solar with solar images on it. Kind of clever. All right, so the next number, 480-6828. 480-6828. 28. Oh, wait a minute. You have 23 or 28? 28? What do you got?
2-3, is that what you said?
No, 28.
Oh, 2-8, okay.
All right, so this one is 480-6868. 480-6868. Check your numbers closely. No? Let's see, 480-6829. Oh. 480-6808. 6808. Oh. This is one I'd recommend, but it's your choice. Okay, the postcard book. And our last ticket number tonight, 480-6842. All right. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You chose wisely.
You want an autograph? I would, yes. I was gonna ask.
I don't get to do this much. So it's just super cool. How many autographs you?
He wants to be able to get back on the road, can we go next?
That's fine.
It's been a while, but the juice has come back. This old guy is to Jim.
I'm not quite to you yet, but I'm getting up there.
So you have you set him up?
What's the most fun I've had? I spent a day doing that before the cameras got any good. And on top, I've actually seen
Yeah.
All right, so you can see Bob Circus is on the image on the screen right now, and he's going to give us a quick update on some plans for a Messier Marathon at Rising Star. So, he's muted. see this, can you hear us? Oh, Bob, we think you're on mute? Okay.
Can y'all hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for letting me cut in line. Been kind of dealing with a little family emergency and I'm driving back from Houston. We'd like to do a Messier Marathon on March the 29th. It's a Saturday. It's a new moon. And at the moment, it is scheduled as a private club event. And I would like to chat just for a moment about to ask the group if we should make it a public event. And if we do that, we would include medics from the Cross Plains EMS team would be happy to come out. We'd have a lot of things to do to prep for it. And we did something very similar to this on our first big event at Rising Star in 2 years ago, almost to the day. And it was very successful. And I think we had, if I remember right, memory serves, we had about 120 people out. And with the work that that Bruce has done with the library and the folks at Rising Star, we think if it's a public event, have around 150 people. Having it as a public event fits with our mission, our principal mission of expounding on astronomy by having star parties and so on. So we have a survey that we'd like to send out tomorrow morning, pretty early, with a little more details and whether or not the club would like to make it a public event. So that's really all I had. I don't have, because I'm on the road, I don't have my presentation materials in front of me. So I just wanted to bring this up to the group. And Bruce, if you want to add more details, please do.
Okay, but in terms of the survey, it'll be released tomorrow morning, and when's the deadline to, when's,
31st, close of business on 31st of January.
okay, that sounds great.
We will have our results almost immediately once it closes. So it'll be a Google Forms survey, and it'll ask you for your email address. I think there's only 3 questions on the survey, so it won't take you very long, and your participation would be really, really appreciated.
All right, any questions from the club? Okay, so I think that's good. So I think this is the first survey we've had since 2021, when we surveyed the group about our dark sky site, because we were trying to gear up to get into a dark sky site. And at that time, we talked about how far we're willing to drive, what type of skies we might envision or experience out there. And there was another item, were we willing to rent space in an observatory? Some of the questions that we were asking in the club. And we had about 48 people respond. to the next slide. Oh, oh cool.
Sky stuff.
Sky stuff, more space things. All right, so the title picture right here is George Lutch's great work, capture of the Rotten Fish Nebula. If you go to the next slide, he actually submitted this to, where did he submit it? He submitted it to something. He submitted it to some place where you submit pictures. Astroworld. George, how did that go?
I got a month, but I didn't get years, so.
You got
that's okay.
month, though.
I don't think I missed it by much.
Hey, you put it out there. It's a beautiful picture. I love the brown. I always love the brown.
They had a lot of other pictures in there that were magnificent.
Yep, you had a lot of you had a lot of tough competition, but I felt like you were up there with it. Next slide. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, so Bright Comets this year. I don't know if you've read about it. 2024 G3, discovered by the Atlas Survey. It's a southern constellation, or southern hemisphere comet now. Whatever glimpse we get to see of it, you're going to have a very, very good horizon to the west. I tried to see it. Yes, sir?
Just to let you know, Robert's screen is still the primary screen, and yours is one of the little boxes at the top on Zoom.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Thank you. There we go. Okay, so I mean, aside from that comet, which is starting to show actually a pretty spectacular showing in the southern hemisphere, which I guess we'll just see pictures of from here on out. You know, unless something new gets discovered this year, we're not really going to have a lot of visitation with bright comets. There'll of course be the dozens and dozens of dim ones and telescopic ones. What we have to look forward to are comets in November, getting to magnitude 9. This particular one should be to magnitude 6 by February of next year. Periodic 210 Christensen, magnitude 8 by November, and 24P that should be bright. So we got about 3 comets here that we have to look forward to. So it'll be a little bit slow, especially compared to last year and all the spectacles that went on in the sky. It's a really hard year to follow. Ben Hudgens, however, club member with us, he managed to capture this image of the G4 comet before it basically did its perihelion and got to the other side of the sun. Actually, they were thinking that it actually went, its perihelion with the sun was actually inside Mercury's orbit, and there was concern that it might actually break up and not be seen on the other side, but it seems like it did survive. So that's a show for the Southerners. Next slide. Venus at its highest and brightest. I don't know if you guys have noticed how high Venus is right now. On Thursday the 30th, it will be actually Thursday the 30th, and it'll be at the highest, and then on Sunday, February the 16th, it'll be its brightest all year long. So, and this is John McCrae's image of Venus and the Pleiades and the Hyades up there. Yes.
How can it not be at its brightest and the highest at the same time? Wouldn't it make sense they would be the 2 peaks at the same time?
No, and that's a fine question, good sir. So when you've got it at its highest, you're looking at greatest elongation. But as so you're basically looking at something less than a 90-degree angle from the sun, from the Earth. Actually, it would be the 90-degree angle from the sun, but it may not be at its biggest phase.
So more of it has sunlight on it when it's bright.
The more sunlight that's on it, the brighter it's going to be. Was there another question? Okay, next slide. Occultations and close approaches. So this one, Mr. Tyler Dollarhide actually had the finest picture in the club of this guy right here, poking out of the side of the moon, which happened earlier this month. The only close approach that's happening over this next 30 days is going to be on February the 6th at about 1 o'clock in the morning. That the moon and the Pleiades are going to be about half a degree apart. Next slide. Just love that picture, it's great. Titan shadow transit, so that continues as we continue towards the time in, it's somewhere between March and May, I can't remember when it is, that we're actually going to see the plane of the rings edge on, and for a brief amount of time, we're basically going to see Saturn with what looks like no rings. Shadow transits of Titan, which really only comes at this time every Saturnian year, at least the fall and the spring for Saturn, January 23rd and February 8th. They're not favorable for this particular Saturnian springtime, as all of the transits are happening actually during the daytime, as you can see here. However, though, this image in the background here is actually an image of Saturn in the daytime, so it is possible to image it, and it's possible to see it in the telescope with the eyepiece. Next slide. Then there's that. Next slide. Hey, it'll come, you know, it's just, you know, it's not an if, it's a when, so we'll see. And then there's the parade of planets that we all hear about. It's great. These are the sort of things that put astronomy on the radar with the general public, which is really cool. So, through January and February, Saturn's gonna be quick to set as time goes on, but we're at least getting 6 of the planets early on in the evening that are visible all at the same time, with appearances by the moon. Next slide. And just to make mention of something that I did mention 2 months ago, about what just recently happened. This is the red planet has reached opposition just a few days ago, about 5 days ago, and handily happened to be a really good time for that occultation to happen. So that's why you get such a great shot of Mars there. It's at least as close as it's going to be to us when that event happened. Next slide. Our next new moon is on January 29th. Next slide. The full moon, our next full moon, is going to be on February the 12th. This is Justin Godfrey's recent image of the moon. Next slide. Yeah, and that's really all that's going on in this coming month. Most of it is just like things that you'll be seeing instead of things that are happening on one particular day, that things you'll be able to kind of view in either a part or the extent of the month. So it's kind of devoid of any major meteor showers or eclipses. Sorry, no eclipses. And, so we get to our featured constellation, which this month is Taurus, the bull. 5 stars with suspected planets. known references to Taurus as early as the Bronze Age, which is like between 3000 and 1500 BC. And lots of named stars, thanks in part to the Pleiades, which has always been observed over the years. Brightest, one of the closest open star clusters to Earth, being so bright and being included in lore throughout observation history that, of course, all those stars are going to have names. There's actually 17 formally named stars. Only 2 Messier objects, but the Hyades, which is right here, and the Pleiades actually have, they are the 2 closest open clusters to us, all in the same part of the sky. The next slide. So the very first in the catalog of Messier, M1, is the Crab Nebula. This was actually discovered by an astronomer named John Bevis, and there's records that everything really points to that the Crab Nebula was the supernova that actually created the Crab Nebula was very likely witnessed. The actual supernova explosion was witnessed by the Chinese, who have, I think, the longest running astronomical record. And what was that, 1054 AD? Thank you. And a fun fact about this one is that the little guy in the middle that's left of said exploding star is a neutron star that spins at about 30 times a second. So next slide. By the way, that picture was Jim Putt's Crab Nebula right there in actual color. The Pleiades, Messier 45, the second Messier object in the constellation. It's a young cluster. It's about 100 million years old. Collective apparent magnitude of 1.6, certainly bright enough to be seen with the naked eye, and appears as a nice little fuzzy spot up there that you can actually pick apart at least 7 of its stars with the naked eye. The star cluster is actually about 3,000 stars. Here it is. It's a beautiful image of it by Mr. Sean Paul. And true color here. A lot of reflection nebulae. It's called the, Merope? However that's pronounced. It's the reflection nebula. That's suspected to be a supernova remnant as well. Yeah, and like I said earlier, the 9 brightest ones are actually 9 of the 17 named stars in Taurus. Next slide. Then there's the Hyades. So this is the head. This is an open cluster that's near the head of the, or in the head of the bull. It's an older of the 2. Aldebaran, by the way, the red giant, the big bright red giant, the eye of the bull there is actually not a part of that cluster. It's just in line of sight. The 4 brightest stars in the cluster are all red giants. But what they found is that a couple of the white dwarfs in the cluster actually have asteroid belts, actually finding indications of matter that are orbiting these white dwarfs. So it's kind of an interesting thing. You think about white dwarfs as expelling gas, but you don't think about the fact that they might have asteroids around them. What the speculation is on that, I don't know. Whether there's some sort of collision that took place or something, who knows. This is the Hyades right here. Couldn't find any good shots of the Hyades by club members, so might be a cool one to check out. Next slide. NGC 1555, this is Heinz variable. Up here, right above the Hyades. It's a reflection nebula, which is illuminated by a variable star, but this variable star, which is T Tauri, is actually a prototype variable. And so what they mean by prototype variable is that it's the first variable of its kind that basically all variables called a T Tauri variable are compared to. This was discovered in the 1800s by John Hind, and yeah, it's very, very, very pretty. This is Adam Bloch's handiwork right here. Next slide. So we got a pair of it's NGC 1409 and NGC 1410. A galactic version. Yeah, I was like, why did I say that? And then I realized was what from I learned from it. We're talking about the galactic scale of one galaxy sucking the gas from another. So like what you see with like a dwarf star sucking the life out of a companion giant or a companion star, just pulling the gas in from gravitational forces. We're seeing that on a galactic scale with these two galaxies. That dark line right there, that's dust and gas, and you can see all the blue starburst activity happening there, and you see this galaxy devoid of the starburst activity. So we're seeing the same thing. We're seeing it on a galactic scale. It's a fascinating situation right here, being streamed over 20,000 light years from one galaxy to another. Obviously, this one's going to be the clear winner. Next slide.
He can come back.
Yeah, that's a spirit. That's a spirit. Yeah, we'll exactly. The Crystal Ball Nebula. So this is a planetary nebula that was discovered by William Herschel. It's also known as NGC 1514. And this was actually this was actually kind of a threshold from one sort of a breakthrough, I guess you'd say, from the thinking before that this was discovered. William Herschel basically looked at nebulae, and pretty much because of not necessarily I guess the inability to really resolve the stars, that there was an assumption that things that looked nebulous in the sky were just, in Herschel's mind, actually just made up of stars that just couldn't be resolved. But then he discovered this guy right here, which is clearly not made of stars. Maybe one star in the center here, but it was clearly surrounded by gas and not just a globular cluster or whatever. And that really kind of sent him on a different path of thinking about what nebulae actually are. Next slide. So more things about constellation Taurus. We've got the Sky Live. We've got the Constellation Guide, which is where Universe Guide and Wikipedia is all a great place to get information. And as far as the Annals of the Deep Sky, well, I guess we're just going to have to wait for that one.
Save your money.
There you go. Next slide. And keep looking up. I do want to feature this guy. This is from Christopher Ashford. It's a long, beautiful picture of the Christmas tree star cluster and the Cone Nebula. The cone right there. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
So we're going to turn on the lights, so cover your eyes. 3, 2, 1. Ooh. Okay, so monthly reports. I don't know that we have any announcements. Let's go to announcements and see if that shows up. No, but we'll do monthly report. So if you normally do report, an outreach report, start streaming down here so you can make your report. Anybody besides Patrick? John McRae, not here? Bob's on the
Online.
Oh, great, John.
Tanny Hills and 1687 and YA, the Young Astronomers, there'll be slides that basically indicate that there are anything coming up because those things start in March. So.
Okay, very good.
Alrighty, so we're gonna have a busy February as we got all the planets, so it should be good for star parties, assuming that the weather will allow it. So this Friday, we actually got one, they asked to view the planets. This over at Cleburne. It's actually a vineyard and winery, so looking good Friday. So Saturday morning, one of the Harmony schools are having a STEAM festival. It's a daytime thing. I'm gonna be there, but it's a good opportunity for our club to kind of reach out to the public, could talk about our young astronomers and just talk space with the students and the family. So if anybody wants to contribute anything to that, let me know. Next slide. So in the evening, we got another one. This is our annual trip to Oliver Nature Park in Mansfield, but right now the forecast is not looking good for that one, but I'll make a call on that Friday. We'll see how that goes. Then on Tuesday, the 28th, we have a elementary school in North Richland Hills. And then also another one in Hearst on the 30th. And then on the 31st, this is also another annual one. There's a kind of a scouting group. It's not Boy Scouts, but kind of similar. They have a star party on a private. Okay, it's not, unless address is wrong there, but anyway, it's up near Rome. I'll put more, all this will go on the e-group when we get closer to it. And on the 1st, this is also another one we've done in the past. It's over in Cedar Hill. It's a Dogwood Canyon Audubon Center on the 1st. We've done a star party there. They asked us again. And then we got a math and science night on the 6th over in Mansfield. And then we got another couple of schools there. As you can see, a school on the 7th. Like I said, I'll be surprised if we can get half of these based on the weather. We'll see what happens. And then on the 8th, there's a daddy-daughter dance, and they'd like to do a star party after it ends up. It's actually, yeah, I see, at 4 a.m. Well, you can show up at 4 a.m. if you want. There won't be anybody there. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I didn't catch myself on that. I'm sorry. Okay, well, anyway. Well, the event, the dance itself is 4 to 7 p.m., but our part of it would be 6 to 8. So this is Bedford YMCA. So if you've been part of the Young Astronomers, that's the same location. Let's see, then we got Rolling Hills on the 11th. And then I got one in Glen Rose. I'll be down there for that on the 13th. Next up. And then OS Gray, this is another annual one we do in Arlington on the 13th. Again, like I said, we'll see how well the weather behaves with us, and I'll put these all on the e-group as we get closer. Thank you.
So John, we're ready to hear your report.
Okay, our Tanny Hills Star Party startup is about 2 months away. It'll be March 8th, and the sun sets at 6:32 on that evening. The good news is we will have a parade of planets like Bill was referring to a few minutes ago. Except for Saturn. Saturn sets at our sunset, 6:32. So everything else will be visible, plus the moon. And the bad news is that is the night we go on daylight savings time. So we're going to lose another hour of sleep that night. So that's the bad news. So Saturday, March 8th, come on out.
Yeah, we're not going to have young astronomers during during January and February, but we'll start again in March. So. I will talk about 1687 real quickly. We just had the new contract signed. It's for this calendar year. Last year, our first star party was about the 1st of April, so Bob will get some information, but we should expect something last week of March or 1st of April as far as our first star party out there. So.
Rising Star Observing Area. Never did like this part. Rising Star Observing Area. I know that Bruce had mowed it just a couple of weeks ago. Tom and I were out there just a couple of weeks ago. It's doing fine. I don't know if there's anything specific you want me to let you know about. Any questions from anybody about Rising Star? The pads are very nice. The electricity is very nice. So, and I think that one of the next projects may be to put a wall between the two sleeping quarters. But do remember, you do have a place if you're out there at night, you can get in there and catch a nap if you're out there all night for astrophotography. And if I remember correctly, I think Bob Circus said that there are now a couple of heaters out there in that area. So that'll keep you a little bit warmer.
Palo Pinto Mountain State Park has their annual meeting this Saturday at 1 o'clock. It's open to the public. There's usually about 100 people that come out. Reviewing construction out there. They're still looking at opening at 2025. I would suspect more towards the fall. Everything that needs to be built is in process of being built. There's going to be an auction as a fundraiser and some goodies to eat. The meeting will last about an hour, and then there's a hike afterwards of a couple miles just up a trail and give you a flavor of the park. There's 12 miles of hiking trails that have been groomed. We have to do some updating on the trails, you know, how mesquite trees like to grow back and stuff like that. But pretty much I would suspect more towards latter summer or early fall to be opened up. But come out to the general meeting. They'll review everything that's under construction, hiking, equestrian, fishing, bird watching, astronomy, all that stuff will get reviewed. So it's west of Strawn. It's in the park. It's at the maintenance building. As you head towards the state park, it will be on the left side. It will be clearly marked. It's not past the entrance of the park. You're welcome. I'll save you a cookie.
George, anything about the website?
Website is complete as far as the .org portion of it, the .com portion of it. I'm still getting together with the owner of the .org, or the person that's on file as the owner of .org, to have that fixed so that it's on our DNS server, and then everything will kind of gel out as it gets going. Also, anybody that gets on the website, if you notice any links or misspellings or anything like that, please forward it to my email address so that I can resolve it quickly, and we'll get it up and running. And hopefully in the near future, somebody will do a redesign and we'll get that working.
Very good. Thank you, George. I would like to give a shout out to George. I've been sending him dead links, a list of dead links, and he's been turning that around within 5 minutes. So very good response. Thank you, George. All right, so let's transition to our business meeting. and Constantine's going to give us our financial report.
Thank you, Bruce. Hello, everyone. The report is up. So as you can see, we're right now sitting at about $38,658, which is a very sound foundation for us to start 2025 with. This past year, we had some expenses. Specifically, we paid for UNT utilizing this room and also some maintenance out at Rising Star. We also had a $500 donation, which is greatly appreciated. Looking further down on the page, you'll see the Rising Star Development Fund. Right now we're sitting at $4,489, which is a good amount. It'll get us through our upcoming payments in April, May, and also allows for a little bit of funding to do some things that have already been approved, part of Phase 2 construction. While I'm up here, let me also focus on the very bottom of the page. Please note merchandising is up. We sold 57 large and 26 medium calendars, which generated $144 in revenue. So yes, congratulations to those that participated in that, specifically Sean Paul and everyone else. Thank you so much. Good job.
All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so wanted to give you an update on the budget that the board approved at its last meeting a week ago today. So let's go to the next slide. Did you not get my slides? I did. Oh, they were great slides, which I will show next time. How about that? Ooh, that makes it tough. But let me talk about this one. The standalone generator prohibition. The board did make a decision at our meeting last week that the need for standalone generators. What is a standalone generator? It's an electrical generator that's portable, that's used to generate electricity, typically, at least at Rising Star. We used them initially after we bought the property to power the telescopes and to power power tools for construction. But since Comanche Electric brought us power, the need for the standalone generators has diminished. And so what the board decided to do in abundance of caution is to go ahead and ban standalone generators. And so we just don't want you to bring them out there anymore. Any questions on that while I'm on the topic? Okay. And so I failed to mention that the standalone generators, these are the ones that are powered by diesel, gasoline, and propane. These aren't the power packs that are batteries that provide 110 volts as well. So we're just talking about combustion-related electrical generators that are transportable or portable. Yes.
We're starting to let fall.
Yes. That's a good question. So a standalone generator is different than a generator that comes with the RV. And it's different because the club has a program to permit the RV that comes onto the property. And if you bring a generator along with it, then that's also approved. Right, but they are associated and covered by the RV permit. So that's the difference. So think of it this way. The board has regulated all generators out there, and they're in two categories. One is generators with RVs, and ones are standalone generators. And we've banned standalone generators, and we're currently allowing generators with RVs at specific times. Okay. Now, the next item that I have to talk about is we have a 3-hour weekend set up. We were able to contact 3RR, Three Rivers Ranch, and also known as 3RF, or formerly known as 3RF. And the weekend that we selected initially was the new moon weekend in October. We had such a good time at October last year. We wanted that same weekend for this year. But we found out that 3RR has booked all the new moons in 2025 for public star parties. And we then had to pick another weekend for our event. So we reserved October 24th, 25th, and 26th. So save the date. If you haven't been to 3RR, you need to consider going. I've been with the club for over 15 years, and I put off going until last year, and I can't imagine what I missed out on. So I would definitely recommend everyone make plans to go out to 3RR this year. We've made arrangements to book all the cabins that they have, all 6 of them, plus 2 bunk rooms, 1 bunk room for men, other bunk room for women. And then you can, if you want, you can utilize any of the resources that the 3RR has available, and that is RV sites that are out there. And it seems like there's a couple other things. Okay, I don't recall, but there's more detail on this 3RR weekend and coming up. We have until October to get it right, and so we'll start rolling out information for everyone. So I just want you to save the date, which isn't showing up here, but it's October 24th, 25th, and 26th. And the next item, on to the Busy Marathon. So this is what Bob talked about earlier. So we should expect the survey to come out perhaps tomorrow morning when Bob gets home. But you know, our club has an outstanding outreach program. Typically, an organization contacts us and say, we would like to have a program, and you've heard Patrick go through all those requests that we get. And once we approve, we go to their facility, set up, and then we leave. The difference with having that type of operation and the public at Rising Star is now we have all the responsibilities to provide parking, provide first aid, provide supervision. So our level of activity is higher because we have to do more. And that's what the questionnaire is all about. Should we have public come to Rising Star for a star party? And if we do, then how are we going to staff it? How are we going to fund it? The estimate right now for the Messier Marathon is about $1,000 to invite the public to Rising Star. But those are the questions that you'll be seeing starting tomorrow. Yes, sir. So there will be well, 2 things are happening. Bob has made arrangements for a number of telescopes to be live streaming objects that they can see, Messier objects during the night. And I think he's going to coordinate with other people, other club members that come to observe the Messier objects to focus on those during the night. So people can walk through and visit scope to scope and just sample to see what they can see through the scope. I don't know if it's going to be organized where you'd have a map of what's showing when. I don't know if that's been discussed. It's a good question. Yes, sir. Oh. Tablet? Mm-hmm. Right. So there's going to be a small number of people broadcasting, but other people will be like you that just have them up on your display. And when you were there last time, did you have quite a few people stop by to see what you were capturing? What? And awake. That's very good. Right. And I will have to echo what Bob said at the 2023 event. There was a large number of members that came out to come out to see Rising Star, number one, and number two, take that opportunity to check out the Messier objects. Okay, let's move on.
Is there another slide? I guess not. Okay. Business legal, we're doing the bylaws review. We'll have a set for the board, the executive board to look at in March. April, we'll present it, and May, we'll vote. Those are the bylaw changes.
And I looked at Cy and I remembered that I was supposed to mention that we're going to do an audit of our equipment, telescope equipment that we have, that the club owns. Quite a bit of it is at Rising Star, so we'll get a bulk of it done. But if you're currently using club equipment, we're going to ask you to raise your hand so we can get it into the inventory and mark it checked for this year. And yeah, there's a few people. But we're also going to inventory the equipment that we now have out at Rising Star, including 4 buildings, a number of pads, and just a lot of good stuff. All right, let's go to the next slide.
Got a lot of presentations coming up I'm pretty excited about. This next one, just to kind of speak to what Dennis said earlier, is that astronomers are really, really helpful. And funny, it's when I was kind of doing the email exchange with Dr. Sutton here, she, one of her last emails to me, she was like, "I'm so glad that there's interest in this." And it was like, yeah. Oh my gosh, you have no idea. We're all frothing at the mouth. It's the Europa Clipper, come on. So she's actually part of the imaging team, and there's a camera array on the Europa Clipper, which was also on other missions, including one with Mars. It's probably been more than just the one with Mars. That system is called the HiRISE, and basically what they're going to be doing with the Europa Clipper is basically doing a topography of the moon, Jupiter's moon, in case you don't know what Europa is, and basically using the HiRISE for being able to image that and creating a 3D imagery of the surface. So very, very excited about this. Other ones that are coming up is a project scientist from the Event Horizons telescope. So very cool, the whole black hole thing. And other stuff coming up. The lead project scientist for the Solar Dynamics Observatory, that solar scope up in orbit, and other things. Lots of stuff exciting coming up.
So a question, when do tickets go on sale?
It's free as long as you've paid your membership. Tough crowd. One thing that I did want to say, just from an announcement standpoint, is that I think there's a little bit maybe misunderstanding by me that when people send me their slides that I'm supposed to include them in the thing. So I certainly want to get together on that. I think that I've kind of been in the habit of leaving slides out unless they were little, because sometimes the slideshows are much bigger. And well, it's been a tough week. Let's just put it that way. So maybe when you send slides to me, and there is intent on me including them in the slideshow, to please just indicate that in the email. I certainly don't want to miss any information that should be in our meeting, so thank you.
Oh, you want to take this one?
And I'm back. So after the meeting tonight, we all meet at the social house. There are a bunch of us that go out there. Great food, elevated bar food, lots of craft beers and lots of non-alcoholic drinks as well. But we all get together and have a good time for an hour or two. So if you're there, see you there. Thank you.
Yes, he's the founding member of that after-hours event. So that's the end of tonight's meeting. Wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight. If you have any questions, you can reach me at president@fortworthastro.com or info@fortworthastro.com. So that's it. Thank you very much.